Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox and welcome to a special 5-part series on popcorn and compliance, the podcast series where I look at compliance through the lens of Hollywood movies. This month I start a special 5-part series on the classic Universal movie monsters from the 30s and 40s. I mine 5 of them for compliance lessons learned. We include Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman, the Mummy, and we conclude with the Invisible Man. Today we take up Boris Karloff as the Mummy, where he transforms himself into a 2,000-year-old man, having put on some of the most intense makeup ever. Over this series, we have considered compliance lessons from characters as varied as Frankenstein's monster to Bela Lugosi's Count Dracula and Lon Chaney Jr. as the Wolfman. We're also going to conclude our series by looking at Claude Rains as the Invisible Man next week. So I hope you have enjoyed this series. If this is your first episode in this special 5-part series, I hope you'll go back and listen to all 5 of the episodes. I had a ton of fun producing it, and I hope you will enjoy the lessons learned from The Mummy. And now, over to Timothy and Fiona on Boris Karloff as The Mummy.
Welcome, deep divers. Ever thought about where real lasting lessons for organizations might come from? Like truly unexpected places. What if I told you a dusty old monster movie from way back in the 30s held more useful insights than, say, your latest corporate textbook? Well, get ready, because today we're doing a deep dive into Boris Karloff's iconic 1932 film, The Mummy. And forget just the scares. Our mission here is to pull out some, well, genuinely surprising and timeless wisdom from this absolute classic.
It's a brilliant starting point, isn't it? The film it introduces Imhotep, right? An ancient Egyptian priest. He's condemned for forbidden acts, and bam, resurrected thousands of years later. But he's not just your typical monster. He's this figure burdened by history, and secrecy, and dealing with the massive fallout of breaking some very serious rules.
Exactly. And that's where, for us, and hopefully for you listening, The Mummy stops being just a gothic horror flick and becomes this powerful parable. It's all about those hidden risks, lurking just below the surface. The real danger of ignoring history. And, crucially, why clear rules and controls are so vital in any organization, really, this deep dive. It's kind of a shortcut to understanding why the past is never really gone, and how if you ignore it, it'll pop back up to haunt you, maybe even, in your own job.
Spot on. This is really for anyone who wants to get how small issues can fester and become huge problems, how culture fundamentally drives behavior, and maybe most importantly, how you can avoid unleashing your own mummies, those hidden destructive things at work, or, frankly, anywhere. What's so fascinating is just how relevant this ancient story feels when you look at it through a modern lens. It shines a light on these really deep truths about people and organizations that just don't seem to change over time.
It really does make you think, doesn't it? Okay, right then. Let's get stuck in. First big lesson from The Mummy. The curse of forgetting. Why your organization's ignored past is its most dangerous future.
You see this so clearly right near the start of the film. The British archaeologists, they find Imhotep's tomb, and there are warnings. Clear hieroglyphs saying basically, danger, do not disturb. But, curiosity.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit of academic arrogance, hubris, they just ignore them. And the result, boom, centuries-old curse unleashed, proves some doors are best left shut, right.
Yeah, and it's not just a movie thing, is it, that resonates so much with compliance? How often do we see companies basically fail to learn from their own past mistakes, or even ignore massive scandals in their industry? Why does that happen? Why do they keep, stepping on the same rake?
That is a great question. And honestly, it often just boils down to a mix of things. Institutional amnesia, maybe. Leadership changes, people move on, the lessons get lost. Or sometimes they just don't make integrating those past learnings a priority. Think about it. How many bribery scandals do we see pop up in sectors where other companies have already been nailed for almost the exact same thing? Or firms jumping into high-risk markets without even looking at how others got burned doing the same thing. It's amazing. History doesn't just rhyme. Sometimes it's a direct repeat because nobody's listening.
It's like they're crossing their fingers, hoping their mummy won't wake up this time around.
Precisely. So the big takeaway here, the really crucial bit, is that compliance programs have to institutionalize these lessons learned. We're talking practical stuff, like proper postmortems after something goes wrong, deep root cause analyses to figure out why it happened, not just what happened, and using case studies and training so that past failures aren't just dusty reports, but real absorbed lessons for the current team. You know, history's a teacher, sure, but you actually have to attend the class, right? Ignoring it is just asking for trouble.
That's a really strong point about history.
And
Speaking of things hiding in the shadows, that leads us perfectly into lesson 2, the Imhotep principle. How radical transparency acts as an exorcism for organizational secrets.
right, the mummy illustrates this perfectly. Imhotep survives for millennia because he's hidden, entombed, forgotten. He literally thrives in the dark, in secrecy. And when he comes back, he operates from the shadows using half-truths, disguises. Because his real identity, his true power, is kept secret. His influence grows precisely because he stays hidden, unexposed.
Okay, now this is where it gets really juicy for us, right? Because that's such a powerful metaphor for compliance risks in the real world. Misconduct, corruption, fraud, abuse, you name it, it absolutely loves secrecy. When information is hidden, when there's no transparency, risks don't just add up, they multiply, they fester, they get worse over time. And by the time things finally come to light, usually because they're forced out, the damage is almost always, well, catastrophic. But practically speaking, what's the biggest barrier? What stops companies from being truly transparent?
Ugh, the million-dollar question, indeed. Often it's a culture thing, isn't it? A deep-seated fear, maybe. Fear of repercussions, fear of damaging the brand. This idea of protecting the company at all costs, even if it means hiding things. Or sometimes it's simpler, they just don't have the systems in place to be transparent, even if they wanted to. But the key thing is, transparency is the ultimate enemy of misconduct. It really is. Compliance officers, they need to be champions for disclosure, insist on it, through things like clear, honest financial reporting, really transparent third-party relationships, know who you're dealing with, why you're dealing with them, and creating open, trusted channels inside the company so people feel safe speaking up. Darkness lets misconduct grow. Transparency is like flipping on the floodlights. It exposes those hidden risks so you can actually deal with them before they turn into monsters.
That really hammers it home. And it touches on something powerful, the idea that some things just last. They endure. Which brings us straight to our third lesson, paper versus people. Why culture is the mummy's true master.
Yeah, what's incredible in the film is that even after 3,700 years, Imhotep's driving force is still his forbidden love for Angus-on-Amon. That's his motivation, his core belief, his cultural imprint, you could say. It outlasts everything, laws, punishments, even time itself. It's this undeniable, powerful force, more powerful than any curse or tomb.
And isn't that just like corporate life? You can rewrite policies, run endless training sessions, change leaders. But if you've got this deep-rooted culture of secrecy or corruption or maybe fear of speaking up, it'll stick around unless you tackle it head-on, deliberately. I totally see that parallel. But here's a thought. Can a strong culture sometimes hide problems? Like make compliance weaknesses harder to spot, which is maybe even more dangerous?
Oh, absolutely. That's a really sharp point. A strong culture, if it's unhealthy, can definitely create blind spots. You know, a culture of this is how we've always done it or don't make waves, that can actively shut down dissent. It stops problems from surfacing. Regulators like the Department of Justice, the DOJ, they stress this all the time. It's the culture, not just the paper program, those binders on the shelf, that dictates whether compliance actually works. You can have perfect policies, but if the underlying culture doesn't buy in, if people don't live it, those controls are basically useless. They're fragile. I saw this once. A company had beautiful policies, top-notch stuff on paper. But the real culture, the informal rule was, hey, your numbers no matter what.
Yeah.
Guess what happened? Major scandal. The culture just completely overrode the controls, ate them for breakfast, as they say.
Wow. That's a sobering example.
Yeah.
So, okay, the critical question that becomes, how do you actually change something so ingrained?
Well, the big takeaway is that compliance folks need to be proactive culture shapers, not just rule enforcers. It needs that strong tone from the top, right? Leaders can't just say the right things. They have to visibly live ethical behavior in their decisions every day. Then you need modeling from the middle. Managers are key. They don't just enforce rules. They have to reinforce the values behind them through their own actions. And it needs constant reinforcement at every single level, making ethics part of the normal conversation, not just a once-a-year tick box training. Controls, yeah, they're important, essential even. But without the right culture backing them up, they're as flimsy as, well, ancient papyrus in a sandstorm.
What a brilliant analogy. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Let's talk about being too focused on the past. Our fourth lesson, the mummified mindset. When obsession with old risks blinds you to new threats.
Yeah, back to Imhotep. He is utterly consumed by one thing, reviving his ancient love. That's it. He's manipulating the modern world, but only as a means to resurrect the past. He completely ignores everything else going on around him, and this total obsession, this fixation on the past, it blinds him to present dangers to what's happening now. And ultimately, it's his undoing. He just can't adapt.
And organizations, let's be honest, can fall into exactly the same trap, can't they?
Yeah.
Compliance programs that only focus on risks they faced years ago, or procedures that haven't been updated, or historical problems. They become obsolete really fast. It's like trying to fight off a sophisticated cyber attack with, I don't know, a musket. Just think about the speed at which things are changing now. ESG compliance, AI governance, the whole complexity around supply chain transparency, companies stuck fighting last decade's battles, worrying about last decade's risks. They're just sitting ducks for these new emerging threats. They're looking backward while the world sprints ahead.
And if you connect that to the bigger compliance picture, it's about striking a balance, isn't it? You absolutely have to learn from history, learn from past mistakes, but you can't become a prisoner of that history. You need to keep your eyes looking forward, too. Scan the horizon. The 2024 update to the evaluation of corporate compliance programs, the ECCP, it specifically talks about this. It stresses assessing new business models, emerging risks. It says a program has to be dynamic, and that's critical. Compliance has got to look ahead just as much as it looks back, constantly assessing what's new, what's coming, what could bite us next, because the risks of today might look nothing like the risks of yesterday.
Excellent point. Don't let the past become this, cozy blanket that stops you from seeing what's actually coming down the road. Okay, finally our fifth lesson, the Pharaoh's folly. How a lack of boundaries unleashes unintended consequences.
Think about those archaeologists again. Why do they ultimately fail? Because they have no boundaries. None. They open what the warnings clearly said should stay closed. They touch things they shouldn't. They completely ignore these explicit warnings carved in stone. Their lack of restraint, their refusal to respect the lines drawn, it just unleashes chaos and destruction on themselves and everyone else.
So translating that for us, this is classic compliance 101, right? Boundaries matter. They exist for a reason. In business, those boundaries are our policies, internal controls, approval processes, our ethical standards. When people ignore them, even if they think it's for a good reason, like moving faster or hitting a target, it creates huge exposure. Massive risk. You hear people complain about bureaucracy, right? Red tape slowing things down. But honestly, the global enforcement landscape, it's just littered with companies that blew past boundaries chasing profit and ended up facing consequences that dwarfed any short-term gain. What's the toughest part, do you think, in getting people in an organization to really respect those boundaries?
I think the hardest part is often that tension. The tension between following the rules, which can feel slow, and the pressure for speed, agility, innovation in a really competitive market. People start seeing boundaries as roadblocks, not as guardrails designed to keep them safe. So the takeaway is you have to constantly reinforce them. Build controls that actually prevent people from easily crossing lines. You need to actively monitor for boundary crossing behavior, and this is key. You have to constantly explain why the rules exist in your training, in your communications. It can't just be do this because the policy says so. It needs to be we do this because it protects us from potentially catastrophic harm. Boundaries aren't just annoying hurdles. They're the protective walls that stop organizations from unleashing their own mummies, those hidden, destructive forces that can turn everything crashing down, just like Imhotep nearly did.
Wow. Okay, this has been genuinely illuminating, a really fascinating deep dive. Karloff's The Money really holds up, doesn't it? It's so much more than just an old horror movie. It's this incredibly rich meditation on history and secrecy, obsession, consequences. For anyone trying to navigate today's complex organizations, it's basically a masterclass in governance.
Precisely. It's such a powerful reminder that the past, especially past misconduct, unresolved issues, it never really stays buried, does it? Just like Imhotep, compliance failures, they rarely just appear out of nowhere. They're usually buried, hidden, ignored for a long time, until eventually they claw their way back to the surface with destructive force demanding attention. Our job really is to be those vigilant archaeologists, but in reverse. Study the history, yes, but then insist on transparency, actively shape the culture, look ahead for new risks, and relentlessly enforce those boundaries. These aren't just nice-to-haves, they're fundamental safeguards.
So as you, our listeners, go about your day, maybe take a moment to think about this. What ancient hidden mummies might be buried in your own professional landscape? Or even personal? What unspoken cultural norms, ignored histories, or maybe slightly bent rules, what might be quietly waiting there, ready to resurface and cause its own kind of trouble? The Karloff mummy teaches us a crucial lesson. Vigilance, transparency, and a strong ethical culture are really the only things that protect us from being haunted by the past. So what's one action you could take today, maybe even a small one, to shine a light on something hidden before it decides to emerge on its own terms?
This is Tom Fox again. Thank you so much for listening to this special edition of Popcorn and Compliance, where we're looking at the classic Universal movie monsters in the month of October 2025. Today we looked at The Mummy, and next week we're going to conclude our series by checking out The Invisible Man. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this as much as I've enjoyed producing this series. Also, my hosts, Fiona and Timothy, are AI voices, so I'd love to get your thoughts on having AI-generated voices as my guest host. Please leave a comment or just let me know. I look forward to hearing from you. This series is a special production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.